Thank you very much, David, for telling me I was muted. All right, so let's get this party started. I'm going to turn off my video and save some bandwidth there. And let's go. So our game plan, we're going to talk a little bit about what Sumo is. Again, if you've attended to the workshops, you've probably heard this, but that's okay. You'll hear it again. Then I'm going to launch you into a security demo. And for those of you who took the security analytics workshop, you saw that security demo. And again, you'll see it again. Apologize. But after that, we're going to get into the labs. And you'll see that we're going to go through 9 labs that we're going to do. And it says we're going to do labs 1 through 5, and then we'll take a break. I'll actually adjust the break as we need to. I'll probably go, like I said, about an hour, 55 to an hour into this, and then I'll take a break, and then we'll finish up whatever labs and stuff we need. One of the goals of this lab is that you can create a dashboard that you can take home with you. So the goal of this course and the goal of this exercise is not only do you get to learn about creating security queries and doing security analytics, but you also get to create a dashboard that if you happen to be using AWS, you can export it out of here and you can import it into your environment and you can use that dashboard right out of the box. So that's pretty cool. We'll also talk about compliance and CrowdStrike and things like that. Again, the last hour is going to be devoted for you to take a certification exam. And I'm going to show you where you can take that certification exam and how you can get there and all that fun stuff. I will be here when you take the certification exam. So if you get stuck on a question, you are welcome to ask me. All of our certification exams are open book, open note, open instructor, open slides, and I'm going to show you where all that resource and information is. Okay. So here we are. Sumo Logic. What does Sumo Logic do for me, right? Well, typically in your company, you need to see the status and the health and well-being of your systems, particularly if you're on the cloud with all these microsystems and all these environments across various regions and stuff like that. So with Sumo Logic, we can see the care and feeding of our environments. Are they up? Are they down? Are they being stretched to capacity? What is going on? If you're using Kubernetes to scale up and scale out, is Kubernetes doing its job like it's supposed to? Under security intelligence, which is really what's the driving factor for today's conversation, today and tomorrow's conversation is, where are my users logging in from? Are they logging in from the basic correct areas? If I'm a regional company, are my folks logging in from my region? Is there somebody logging in from outside of my region? So that's kind of handy to know. Where are they logging in from? If they're logging in from an IP address, and then in a relatively short period of time, they log in from another IP address, and those 2 IP addresses are in different countries, geographically spaced apart, then a little alarm bells might go off in your mind saying this doesn't make sense. If John Meredith logged in from Bedford, New Hampshire, and then 2 hours later, John Meredith logged in from San Francisco, California, little alarm bells should go off in your mind saying, because we don't have transporter technology, and that's not going to work. So again, this is how you can do some security intelligence. And we'll focus on that in this course. Business intelligence, right? We've got web servers, we've got systems and stuff like that. I got users using Zoom. What are they doing with Zoom? How long are their calls? I'm paying Zoom a certain amount of money. Am I getting my money's worth, right? So I can see, how long my calls are, how long my things are. Are they taking advantage of some of the Zoom functionality that I'm paying for? All of that good stuff. And then over here, there's a little diagram called global intelligence. And global intelligence looks at a very, very high level of your operational intelligence, your security intelligence, and your business intelligence with other companies in your geography and in your area and stuff like that. So, for example, I don't know if you guys heard, but apparently there's a little bit of an outage today. And so with global intelligence, you might notice that some folks are experiencing an outage and be able to quickly identify that and see what you need to do to mitigate that for your company. So down here at the bottom, we talk about your people. So if you're from DevOps, you're from engineering, IT ops, SecOps, whatever your role is, I'm sure you have a vested interest in knowing what's going on. All right. And also, not only do we have your people, but we have your data, right? You're running applications, you're running microservices, you're running cloud systems and various infrastructure. Maybe you're running software as a service, maybe Office 365, maybe Salesforce. It's one of my favorites. Maybe you're running mobile devices. Lord knows we have enough of those. And then finally, third-party apps. So basically, if it generates log data we can get that log data, we can turn it into some meaningful intelligence that you can then read and understand. As far as the software platform of Sumo Logic, it is born in the cloud, raised in the cloud. So it is multi-tenant, it is scalable, it is elastic. You need more resources, the system will scale up automatically. Okay, you don't have to worry about that. You don't need those resources, it'll scale down. We have some machine functionality in here that we'll talk about, as well as APIs, that's to say application programming interfaces, which allow you to make hooks from your other applications into Sumo, or within Sumo, you can make hooks to other things. Like you can send a message or an alert through Slack or through Teams or something like that. As well as you can also deal with advanced analytics. We'll see some of that in this class. And then of course, our big item here, which I just now noticed, is in our out of the box security. We normally have a little pullout here that also talks about some of our certifications. We are FedRAMP modified certified. We are SOC 2 compliant. We are PCI compliant. There's a whole bunch of certifications that we maintain to ensure that your data and your information is protected. And we maintain those certifications so that you know that you've got a viable product here that's going to protect your data and protect your information. All right. When we think about security intelligence across the gambit, you'll find that here at Sumo, we really have three waves that we look at, three pillars, if you will. Our first pillar is audit and compliance, right? You got to make sure that you're maintaining your SLAs. You got to make sure that you're protecting your information, various compliance apps, and various things like that. So again, you'll probably install one of our out-of-the-box apps dealing with compliance and make sure that everything's running fine. So again, I want to make sure that the data is going in and out of my firewall looks correct, and I'm not seeing any malicious attacks and things like that. Is there a question? Okay, thank you. The second column or pillar, if you will, into our security intelligence solutions is security analytics. And that's what we're going to focus on in this course. In this course, we're going to be talking about searches, creating searches, which then we can create dashboards and alerts out of. We'll also talk about some of the advanced analytic capabilities we have here, some of the various functions and stuff we have. And then the third part of the leg, if you will, of the stool that holds the security intelligence solutions up is our new Cloud SIEM Enterprise. And again, SIEM stands for Security Information and Event Management. And this is the heads up display. And if you haven't had a chance, please sign up for SOC Analyst The Ride workshop, and you can see how this is and you can play with it. But basically it takes all of the log data and it correlates like IP addresses and user information and all that fun stuff. And it basically turns those raw records into insights where bad things are happening. So it takes literally millions upon records and turns them into, 50, 60, 20, whatever insights that immediately correlate various signals that basically tell you what is happening within your network, within your environment, so that you can be proactive and or reactive to situations that happen. If you are a security operations analyst, then trying to hunt these threats down by reviewing logs and stuff is really time consuming. We've taken all that out of it for you. You've got this heads up display, you got workflow management, event management in there, and you can just take it for action and resolve these things very quickly. So, but our focus today, like I said, and right now is going to be on security analytics. Any questions? All right. In security analytics, like I said, we're going to start with some searches. And from those searches, we're going to start building some dashboards. And as we start building those dashboards and stuff like that, we start looking at the code that makes these log searches up. We'll talk about some advanced analytics, like our log reduce or our log compare, which basically combines like messages together and or compares it with other time frames. So we got some really powerful advanced analytics in this product that I think you're really going to like. Okay. Now, what we want you to do is we want you to go ahead and log into our training environment. So bear with me just a second here. Let me copy this. Let me put this in the chat box. For those of you who were in our earlier classes or workshops, you may have logged in before. So what I want you to do is I want you to fire up a browser. Google Chrome or Firefox works best. And I want you to, in the URL box, type service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. Then the next thing I'd like you to do is pick a 3-digit number from 001 to 999. Pick that number, type it in the chat box. For example, I live in New Hampshire. The area code out here is 603. So I'd probably grab 603. And what I want you to do in the email field is log in as training plus analyst with that number. So I would log in as training plus analyst 603 at sumologic.com as the email address. And then the password, and we just changed it yesterday. The password is capital SEC, URITY, numeral 2, numeral 1, exclamation mark, security 21, exclamation mark. And that's the password. And you should be able to log in. Now I see in the chat box, a lot of folks are giving us numbers, and I appreciate that. That's exactly what I want you to do. So pick a number, a 3-digit number. Hopefully you grab yourself a unique number. One other thing I am going to do is in the chat box, I am going to put my contact information. Earlier in an earlier workshop, somebody asked a logical question, and the logical question was, hey, John, how long can we play with this training environment? And the answer to that question is as long as you want. By the way, Werner, you probably need to make it a 3-digit number. Okay, you got it. Good. Thank you, sir. So the point is that in July, we will change the password again. It gets changed the first Monday of the month, just so you know. And so when the new password comes out, I don't know what it's going to be yet, but when we do change it, I will know what that password is, which is why I put my contact information in there so that you can reach out to me next month if you want to come in here and play. All right. So now what I'd like to do here is I'd like to do a poll and see if you guys are all in. So polls are open. If you would, are you able to log in? Are you having any problems? If you're having problems, reach out to me or Scott. We'll help you out. Somebody asked if I can repeat the instructions. I'll give it a second or two here, and then I will. A couple of folks want me to repeat the instructions. I get that. So let me end the poll. Okay, let me end the poll, abort the poll here, if you don't mind. And let's talk about these instructions here. Bear with me a second. So what I want you to do is I want you to fire up Google Chrome or Firefox, fire up a browser. Okay. And I want you in the URL to type in service.sumologic.com. And when you do, it's going to give you a dialog that looks like this. Email and password. And so what I want you to do is pick a 3-digit number. Now, as I said, I'll grab 603. That's the area code here in New Hampshire. So I'm going to type in training plus analyst. And then I type in my number 603 at sumologic.com. So your username is really an email address, as they are on most authentication systems today. So you type in training plus analyst with that 3-digit number that you picked at sumologic.com. The password is capital SEC, URITY, numeral 2, numeral 1, exclamation mark. Or in other words, it's security 21, exclamation mark with a capital S. Okay. And if you do that right, when you click sign in, it should let you in. Now, what did I do wrong here?
Jared, is it training plus analyst or is it training plus user?
Oh, it's training plus analyst. Hang on a second. Let me check some things out here real quick. That looks correct. Hey, well, let me just grab a different number here. Okay. Hold on. Training plus analyst. Yeah, there we go. Sumologic.com. Hey, let me try this one real quick. At sumologic.com. Let's change this password. That was an old password.
You forgot the E.
Yeah.
Backseat typer.
Football's been very good to me. All right, that's good.
3-digit, not 2.
3-digit. That's correct. 3-digit. Yeah.
You put 2.
I'm sorry. This is a 3-digit number.
Yes. Sorry.
The security 21 exclamation
That's
mark
correct.
is the last number. You guys were all able to log in, correct? Right?
Uh,
Anybody not able to
John.
log in? Yes, sir.
Can you try with a lowercase t for training instead of an uppercase t? I think
I
that's
sure
it.
can. Yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah, I can do that. Follow those directions. Okay. Oops, hold on. It's trying to compel it to make it a lowercase
there's an account that's locked.
Yeah, okay, that account's locked. I locked that one out. Thank you. Let's try another one. Interesting. I've not had this problem before.
Do
Well,
22. The one I'm in is 224. I'll log out.
That's fine. No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm going to go ahead and log in with my account. But the point is any of you not able to log in? That's really my question. And the answer to the question is it should be. I understand, Mohaz, you mentioned that you should pick a certain range of numbers. And you mentioned that on the slide, it says from 351 to 450. No, it actually is from 001 to 999. So this is actually incorrect on the slide. So I appreciate you pointing it out. You should be able to log in. And I just want to make sure everybody's able to log in. So I'm sure there's some simple little typo I'm making, maybe a trailing space or a leading space. But
from the chat, it says everybody's in. So
Yeah.
go ahead and start.
I agree. And more importantly, just to reinforce, let me run that poll again. So obviously I'm challenged, but I'm challenged anyway. So I'd much rather have the instructor have problems than you guys. So hold on a second. Sorry, let me try this again. All right, polls are open. Let me know if you guys are all in. I get some immediate responses here. I've got 2 folks that want me to repeat the instructions again. Okay, no problem. So step number 1, bring up either Google Chrome or Firefox browsers. Bring up Google Chrome or Firefox browsers. Step 2, in the URL box, type in service.sumologic.com. Type in service.sumologic.com. And that should take you to this page right now. I'm going to end this poll real quick. Okay. Close it up. Okay. And here, I want you to pick a 3-digit number. Anything from 001 to 999. And at the risk of being silly, I'm going to grab this training analyst 603 again at sumologic.com. Make sure there's no trailing zeros, no leading zeros. And the password is a capital SECURITY exclamation mark.
No, 21 exclamation.
Sorry. There you go. Sorry. Capital SECURITY 21 exclamation mark. I am here on a football scholarship. I don't know. Says that account's locked. Okay, cool. I got to unlock that account. But let's go in here. I'm going to log in with my credentials, and that works just fine. I seem to have mussed up a couple of accounts, which I can fix. That's the reason why I have administrative rights. So
if you are locked out, try to grab a different number.
Yes, please.
There's a couple of people that are getting a locked out message. Don't worry about burning one. We can always go back and fix them later.
Yep.
But to get the class rolling, go ahead and try like 987 or something that's not been used yet. So just try a different one.
Yep.
The good news, folks, is you can log into this anytime. The labs, all the content, even as John had said earlier, that it's recorded. You can also go in to the portal and access a lot of this information as well. So if you want to come back later and not just listen to the video, but actually get hands-on, that is available to you. So we can get moving here.
Yep. Okay.
So the question is, it starts at service, and then as that resolves, it does pivot over to live.us too. So even though we start at service, don't worry about it. It will pivot you to live.us2.sumologic.com.
Yep. So when you log in here, if you go to service.sumologic.com, it will take you to this login page. Once
So
you
you-
log in, as Scott mentioned, it will then take you to another page. It will take you to another URL.
Yep. So the question was about the recording. The recording for this session will be available on the Modern SOC portal that you've used to log in and register for this event, for the 2-day event. So you can go there, or they're available on YouTube, and they're also available within the interface. So we've given lots of different ways of consuming this information.
Yep. So here under resources is where I believe they're going to put the links
Yep,
or the session
under the
replays.
resources or
Yep.
session replays. Yeah.
Replays, right. But the point is they'll put those in there. Now, keep in mind that, for example, I finished a session a couple of hours ago. I sent the link to my boss. And so it may take them a few minutes to put that stuff up there. Okay.
You know,
But the
John,
point is they will be there.
some people are getting redirected to the live whatever, and some people like myself are still in service.sumologic.com.
Okay.
Are they both the same host name for the same
Yes, they are.
interface? Okay.
Yes, there. Yep.
So don't worry about it.
Yep. And Amrudu, you said how this total is how many days available. I'm not sure if you're in the portal. This Modern SOC Summit, I'm not sure how long we're going to keep it up, but I'm sure we're at least going to keep it up for 2 weeks. I suspect a bit longer. So I will ask that question, or actually, Scott, if I can ask you to ask Andy that
Yeah.
question.
I'll chase it
we
down.
can get your answer.
Okay, let's get going because we're running out of time here.
Agreed.
All right.
So let's get to work here, guys. So a couple things I want to point out to you. So here in Sumo Logic, this area over here on my left is my navigation pane. And in my navigation pane, I can see things that I share with others in my library. I can see things that I put in my personal area, which, by the way, let me get out of here. Now I understand why I couldn't see what I couldn't see. So here I am, and that's, okay. I can see why I wasn't able to log in. I didn't realize I was logging into the demo environment, but I'm logging into the training environment. I was trying to use those training accounts on the demo environment. That's why I couldn't log in. But down here, I can add things as favorites, and we'll talk about that in the fundamentals class, as well as how to add things and look things by recently opened by you and or recently shared with you. Talk a little bit more about that. What I do want to focus on here, though, is I want to focus on help, and I want to point out 3 things for you. Okay. So if you haven't got this panel open over here on the left, where it says Sumo Logic, and there's the hamburger menu or the stack of pancakes or whatever you want to call it, if you open it up, and if you go down to where the main menu is, where you got app catalog and manage data and all that good stuff, if you click under help, there's a couple things down here I want to point out. First one is documentation. And if I go in here to documentation, this is our product documentation. And you can, I can, we can go in here and we can look at things about our product. You want to look at specific operators, we can type in the name of that operator, have it search, find it, easy peasy. These sections over here on my left are my chapters. So I've got a first chapter, it says start here. Second chapter says send data, so forth and so on. If I open up the start here, chapter, you'll see there's some stuff in here like customizing your Sumo Logic experience and keyboard shortcuts and all that. What I want to focus on for right now and for simplicity's sake is under Quick Start Labs and Tutorials. So if you click on Quick Start Labs and Tutorials, here are the labs for all of our classes. So you can, I can, we can go here and we can see the labs for all of our classes. Okay. If I look at hands-on labs, cloud security and monitoring and analytics, these are the labs that we are going to do in this class. This is what we're going to cover right here. Okay. Now I'm going to take this URL and I am going to copy it here in a second. I hope if I can get the, some of this stuff out of my way. Nothing's ever easy. My ribbon that Zoom provides is in my way and it's not hiding like it usually does. So it's decided to be persistent. So hang on a second. Let me do it this way. There we go. What I want to do is put this information in the chat box. Okay. There you go. There's the link to those. And I do suggest if you're running things like Google Chrome where you can pin that down, please go ahead and pin it down. By the way, I'm also going to pin my Sumo Logic environment down. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to do, I want to point out while we're here in help is in the there's start here, which is the first chapter. If I open up another window, which by the way, I'm just going to grab a new tab to get into our documentation. If you want to type in a URL, it's help.sumologic.com. Help.sumologic.com brings up our documentation. Here in our documentation, under the search chapter, under our search chapter, you will find that we've got something here called search cheat sheets. And in our search cheat sheets, we have something called log operator cheat sheets. These log operator cheat sheets are all the operators that we tend to use in our log searches. So this is a handy reference. So again, I'm going to take this URL, I'm going to copy it. I am going to paste it. There we go. So it's in the chat box, okay? Now also, by the way, if you go to the top of this, you'll see there's a PDF version that you can print out. So if you want to see all of our operators that we use in our log searches and stuff like that, this will list them all for you. Make it real simple. We also, if you're doing metric queries, we have metric operators, but that's a conversation for another course. Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to go back to Sumo Logic. So go back to Sumo Logic if you would. Okay, good. Back to Sumo Logic, and this time I want you to click under Help. Again, open up this navigation pane if you need to by clicking on the hamburger menu. Click on Help, click on Community. Now, another way to get here is, again, URL support.sumologic.com, and then go to Community. Now, in Community, what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for slides, and that's what I want you to do. If you're in Community, I want you to search for slides, SLIDES. And if I click on this link, lo and behold, this shows all of our classes. And for all of our certification classes, we have a link to the labs, we have a link to the recording of that class, we have a link to the slides. As I mentioned earlier, this course is open book, open notes. All right. So here, if you want to click on the slides, you can see the slides because some of our test questions may be based on the slides. And so you can go through here and you can see our slides and basically see what's going on. Okay. If you want to, you can even download those slides. So where it says slides here, if you go in, hang on a second, it's taking me. Okay. You also have the option to download those slides through the interface. I go here. Okay, fair enough. It's decided to redirect me. It's a little place different this time. Okay, I'll look into that. So I wanted to tell you where the recordings are and all that fun stuff. So if you don't have time to take a class, you can listen to the recording, go to town. Okay, now let's get back to our class. Let's get back to our content, and let's go ahead and get this party started. All right. So back to my slides for just a second. You guys have all logged in. We're in great shape. What we want to do is we're going to do a series of exercises. And that's basically what we're going to do. So if we go back to our labs, where our labs are, which we bookmarked, I gave you that bookmark. And we're going to start with lab number 1. We want to monitor user activity. We want to see who's logging in. Now, in our environment, we wrote all of these labs for AWS, for an AWS CloudTrail environment. That's what we did. That's where we're getting all of our information. And so if you're running AWS CloudTrail, you can use these labs yourself. You can play with these labs yourself. Okay. By the way, for those of you who might be running Azure, we have a similar set of labs set up to run with Azure. So these are available for you as well. But for the purposes of our test, you're going to want to go through these labs for the certification test. Okay. So starting here with lab 1, it wants us to go ahead and start grabbing some code and start going to town. All right. For those of you who haven't used Sumo Logic before, I'm going to go into Sumo Logic. I do not need this navigation panel open anymore. So I can click on my left turn signal and close it up, give myself some screen space. Also, I left open a bunch of other tabs previously. I could close those tabs one at a time, which isn't really a great idea. But if I click on these 3 dots, this detail button or more action button, if I click on that, you'll see I have an option to close this tab, close all the other tabs and leave this tab open, or my personal favorite, close all tabs. And I'm going to click on that and get rid of all those tabs. Now, in this class, everything we're going to do is under new, and it's under log search. We are going to create new log queries. So I want to click the new search, and we'll talk about what this interface is and some of the controls and stuff in there. Okay. Now, in here, back to my lab for a second. So I switch back to my lab 1, and there's some code here. Now I can take this code, I can right click on it, and I can copy it. And then I can go into here and I can paste it. So up here where my query is, I could paste that code in. Okay. But what is this code doing and why do I care? Well, this first line is saying that we're going to use the data from our lab/AWS/CloudTrail. And if you don't mind, I'm going to, for right now, comment out these lines. The way you comment out a line is 2 forward slashes. Now, if you want to be more elegant and put 2 forward slashes in the space, that's fine. I don't really care. 2 forward slashes will get the job done. Okay. And to run this query, I'm going to click the start button or hit the enter key on your keyboard. Now, this is going to go into my lab/AWS/CloudTrail logs and show me all my logs for the last 15 minutes. And in this case, over the last 15 minutes, I have 3,063 log entries. It took about 1 second for it to run this query, and down here are my logs. These logs happen to be in JSON, which is very nice. They're in JSON. So I have a field, I have a value. I have a field, I have a value. I have a field, I have a value. So I can very easily, if I want to, parse these fields. Now, where did this stuff come from? This JSON field raw equals, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I can, you can, we can take a field here, event type, and I can right click on it and I can say parse selected key. And when I parse selected key, it will automatically type it in there. So you'll notice that if I move this back up, and if I get rid of this second line, or third line, excuse me, that this line matches the line right above it, with one small exception. If I run this, this is going to call the field by its name. So what it did is it extracted out this event type field and the value of that, and it called it event type, and it's displaying the values. Displaying the values. It extracted the values and it's displaying those values. Great. If I want to rename this and give it a different name, I can throw in an as clause and put in what I want to call it. I want to call it event underscore type. Okay. So now it's renamed the field name up here to event underscore type, and I'm still seeing my values. That's what these lines are basically doing, is that they are extracting out fields that we want to use. In fact, I am going to uncomment out this one. And what it did was it went into user identity, and in user identity, it found the username field. And let me run this real quick. And found the username field. And it's going to, here, my user identity, my username field right there. And it's going to extract that out. And it's going to call it actor. So right now I have parsed out my event type. I have parsed out my actor, my user, who's my user that's doing this, right? So basically all I'm doing right now is extracting fields. All right. Okay. Somebody asked a question, how frequently does Sumo Logic sync with CloudTrail? CloudTrail, when you set up your collectors, you define how often you want to update the logs, how often you want to bring the logs in, but typically it's pretty close to instantaneous. Okay. So it's fairly frequent. All right. The other one I'm going to grab here is I'm going to grab that last line, the source IP address that I commented out before. Come on. And I'm going to add that one in there as well. So again, I could have gone down here to source IP address, and I could have right-clicked and said parse selected key, and it would have added this code for me. Then all I have to do is rename it as source IP. So basically what I'm looking at is here's my message, and I've extracted out these 3 fields. Now I need these 3 fields for something else, which is why I'm extracting them out, why I'm making them available to you and to me. Okay. Now the next one it wants us to grab here is event name, and it wants me to show you how to grab that information. So I'm going to go in here and find event name. I'm going to right click on it, parse selected fields as I did before. There it is. I'm going to throw an as clause in there, and I am going to call it event underscore name. And I'm going to run this. So here I see my actor, my event name, my event type, my source IP. By the way, they're listed here alphabetically, not the order that this thing runs. They're listed alphabetically. You can change that order with the fields command, but that's another conversation for a little bit later. All right. Now the problem is, or the challenge is, you know what we'd like to do? We'd like to let the user pick well, actually, hold on, let's add a where clause here. So I'm going to add, I want to pick what event type I want. So as you might imagine here, we're going to simply do a simple little where clause. By the way, if you want to add another line in here, it's either an alt enter or a shift enter. If you're on a Windows keyboard, it's probably an alt enter. If you're on a Mac keyboard, it's a shift enter. That adds a new line. If you just hit an enter key, it'll rerun the query. And I'm going to type in where. And I want to say where, I think it was event type. Event name, event type. There we go. Where event underscore type matches event underscore type. Now, this may not make any sense to you because I'm basically saying where something equals itself. All right. And that's true. It won't make any sense to you. But what I want to do is I want to filter and I want to turn this into a parameter. So you'll notice that before I swipe over anything, there's nothing over here in the corner. But if I swipe over this field, now it says I can create a parameter. And I am going to click to create that parameter. This brings up my parameter dialog box. And I would like to call my parameter, instead of calling it parameter 1, I'm going to give it the same name as my field. So event underscore type. And my default value, I want to see all of the values. So I'm going to use a global wildcard. The global wildcard is a star. So I'm going to put a star in there. And we'll talk a little bit more about this information, setting the values to this parameter for right now. But if I click save, you will see that it changed this to my parameter name, event type. And then over here, it placed a star in my field here. Now, if I run this, you will notice that I have 754 results. And my event type here is AWS API call. And if I scroll down, I might see some other values. There's only 2 values it's going to show. But if I take, for example, here AWS API call and I swipe over it and I copy it and I replace this with that, And now I run it, I only see 689 results because the other event type wasn't there. So if I specify a star, I will see all event types. And what we're doing here is creating a parameter. So you can pick the event type or the actor or the source IP or whatever you want. That's what a parameter does for us. By the way, let me just jump to the end for a second. I jump to the end. I just want to see if these are all AWS API calls. I was hoping I'd see some different values here. There we go. AWS console
Well done.
sign.
How did you do? And you kept it on. Woo!
Is there a question? Somebody's got a hot mic. Thank you. All right. So any questions so far? Now there's actually two ways to create a parameter. One is you swipe over it and you click on that little link to create the parameter. The second thing that you can do is you can actually code it. You can actually type it and create it as you type it. So I'm going to go back to our directions.
Sorry, John. So
Yeah,
it's
go
a
ahead.
question. So
Yes.
is there any way to add that multiple values in the parameter? So I want
There
to
is.
do that two different names.
No, there's a way to specify that you want multiple values in that parameter. If you look at our documentation, you'll see it. So do me a favor, do a search on parameters and you'll be able to find that information. Or Scott will look it up and send it to you here just a little bit.
Sure.
So, yep, good question. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to do this a little differently. This time, I'm going to filter where actor matches actor, okay? And this time I'm going to create the parameter manually. So I'm going to add a new line. So what I want you to do, type in my pipe. All of my commands are joined together with these pipes. So think of pipe as a bad Columbo episode. One more thing, just one more thing, right? So my pipe is basically saying I want to do one more thing, and I want to do a where clause, and I want to say where actor, I want to filter actor, where actor matches. The reason I'm using matches is I want to do a string matcher, and then because it's a string operator, and then I type in two braces, whatever I want to call my field, which my parameter, I'm going to call it actor, and then two closing brackets. And you'll notice that it automatically goes over here and adds this parameter. And if I go into, it says this field is required. If I try to run this right now, it's not going to run because it needs to know what this value is. But if I go in here and I manage my parameter settings, and instead of this default value, instead of it being blank, if I put a star in there, now when I run it, hit start, it runs just fine. Now these stars mean I want to see all my actors, I want to see all my event types. Now, I could take a particular actor here, Joe Schmo, copy it. By the way, remember right now I've got 722 records. Paste Joe Schmo in here. And I'm down to 35 records because I'm filtering for that specific user, that specific account. You guys think parameters are something you're going to want to use in your environment, your queries? I'll bet they are. Thanks, Scott, for putting the cheat sheets in there about the operators and stuff. Thanks. So in lab one, I added my second where clause. Now what I want to do is I want to start aggregating. I want to count by my actor, my event type, and my event name. So let me take this code, let me paste it in. Let me comment out these last two lines. So you see this one line at a time. In fact, let me just take out the count for a second by commenting it out. So again, I can see my results. I've extracted out these fields. There's my messages. Life is good. Now, whenever you perform an operation like count or sum or min or max, what that's going to do is it's going to get your messages tab here. It's going to add another tab down here called aggregates. Aggregates. And here I said count by actor, event type, and event name. So here's my actor. Here's my event type. Here's my event name, and here's my count. So it says this particular user has tried to log in through APIs. This is the specific thing they're trying to do. They're trying to attach a group policy, and it's been done 11 times in the last 15 minutes. Kevin also tried to use an API call to stop the configuration recorder twice. So you can get a sense now from a security perspective, what are users trying to do and how are they trying to do it? Down here, OnKit tried to sign in through a console, tried to do a console login, did that 11 times. Now, what I want to do is I want to filter. And there's lots of ways to filter. I could add aware clocks, but we also have top and bottom functions that you can use. So I can say top and maybe 5, 10, 2, 3, whatever I want. I want to see the top 10 actors based on their event types and count. So I'm going to run this. And now it's going to show me my top 10 folks based on my event type and my count. And so what I've got here on my row, I've got my actors, I got my different event types, and I got my different count. Now, what I would like to do is turn this into sort of like a pivot table. I have my actors on my rows, which is what I want. I want to put across my columns my event types, my AWS console login or my API login. And then in the middle here, I want my count. And the way that we do that is we use the transpose command. The transpose command. So the syntax is transpose space row. What do you want on your row? We want actor. Space column space. What do we want in our columns? We want our event type. So now when I run this, I now see here's my user. This is how many API calls they made. This is how many console sign-in logs they made. Here's my user. Again, how many API calls they made, how many sign-in calls they made. Now, Joe Schmo only made console sign-ins, didn't try to make any API calls. So
Hey guys, just a real quick one here. Because I've been through this class a couple of times. I've been in the company for 2 months, so I've kind of been in the shoes of new folks looking at this. We got to remember here is John is going through how in the US we use this term. I don't know internationally if this makes sense. John is showing how we make the sausage, right? So John is going through and showing all of the underlying flexibility and power that you can use to create your own stuff, and he's walking through that. But remember, when we started this session off, there's 3 different areas. There's the searches, what John's doing now, but there's a lot of dashboards that you can just light up and use right out of the box. So as you're going through this class and it seems a little bit more complicated, possibly, it's because we're going into gory detail about how we can create all this stuff. We're going to turn this around into dashboards and show you the dashboards themselves. But again, there's a lot of dashboards and apps, hundreds of apps that you can use. So as you're going through this, I just want to make sure if you're getting a little bit concerned about how in depth we're going, he's doing that on purpose because we don't want to just give you a dashboard and not know that, number one, how it's created, but number two, even the canned dashboards that we provide and the canned applications, we give you the access to go into this level of gory detail and make custom changes. So I just wanted to let that, I just want to level set as we go through this. So sorry, John, keep going.
That's fine, Scott, I appreciate it. Which let me take a one off of that. If I were to go into any dashboard that I have, and I'm just going to grab one here at random, okay, don't mind me. I go into this particular dashboard. All these dashboards, thank you very much for no data. That's right. Thank you. I grabbed the wrong dashboard there. Give me a second. Okay, what? I'll grab the right one. Amongst everything else, we had a new application which we modified and stuff. But say I have this dashboard right here that we created. Okay, you can, I can, we can actually edit the query that makes this dashboard up. We can modify it. And so all these dashboards and all these panels that you see in our dashboards are a result of query. So normally it's the old, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Well, the query gets built first and turned into a dashboard or turned into a dashboard panel. And so I'm showing you how to create that query. Now, The reality is, for those of you who are computer science majors like me in college, the first thing you learned about writing code was don't write your own code if you can steal it from somebody else. And so I fully expect you to go into our app catalog, find an app that you like, install it, make it work, whatever. And the point is, you're going to use the code that makes up those panels. You're going to go into an application and you're going to go into the underlying query of something, and you're going to take that code and you're going to use it. Okay, so you're going to go in here and actually open it up in log search or open up in metrics and use that code and modify that code. So we're starting, as Scott mentioned, with the code. So you understand how this stuff occurs. Again, part of my process here is to show you the power of the tool as well. So hopefully that all makes sense. I'm going to close all the other tabs, leave this tab open. All right. Now, the reason I did all this, back to my lab here in lab 1, and by the way, lab 1's the hardest one to run. It says, go ahead and change it to run for 24 hours. So I don't want to run for 15 minutes. I want to run it for 24 hours. How do we do that? It's real simple. We go up here to the time, and in the time, we're going to change this to the last 24 hours. Now, you can run it for the last 24 hours, 6 hours, 3 hours. If you want something that's not listed here, the code's real simple to break. Say I want to run it for the last 2 hours. I can say I want to go back, which is a minus sign, 2, and hours for H for hours, M for minutes, D for days. So I can say I want to go back 2 hours, right? I want to go back 24 hours. Again, I could type in minus 2 for H, 24 hours. That's the last 24 hours. I can also, if I want to here, go into custom and I can type in my date range. Maybe I want to go from one date to another date, a certain date range, a certain date time range. You can type all that stuff in, or you could pick it through the date picker. Okay. And by the way, it'll tell you here in the tooltip what your range is. Now, keep in mind, it's looking at local time. So if your time looks a little different than mine, it's because it's looking at local time, your local time, mine's looking at my local time. All right, so there's my time. And again, I'm looking at more data here for the 24-hour period, and I'm going to go back to my results, and they should look very similar, and life is good. But now I want to create a chart, okay? And creating a chart in our tool is real simple. If you have an aggregates tab, you have the ability to create column charts, bar charts, line charts, area charts, pie charts, and other types of charts that you may want to get into, okay? Some of these are disabled. Like, for example, a map chart is not enabled because there's certain things I need, like latitude and longitude, to display a map. But I can, you can, we can go in here and change this to a bar chart. Now, in my bar chart, again, one of my values, my API calls is in dark blue, and my AWS console sign-in log is in light blue. And I can turn those on or turn those off as I want to. Okay. I could, if I want to go in here and change my colors. So if I go in to change my properties, maybe I don't like blue. Maybe my company colors are red. Although I have to tell you, I'm a little concerned about creating a graph with red colors. I really want red to mean something's wrong, right? So I could color by value range if I want. So if it's a certain range, it could be green, certain range could be yellow, certain range could be red, right? But in the example here and in the exercise, they, I believe, have us changing the properties to red. And then we can change our settings and we can change our parameter values. So before I get into the changing the parameter values, are we good so far? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. A couple of questions have come in. All right, thank you very much. All right, well, the problem here is that if I go over to event type and I get rid of the star, I don't see a pick list of my choices, okay? I don't see a pick list of my choices, and I really want a pick list of my choices. That would make this go a lot better. Now, truth be told, before class, we created hang on a second here. We created a lookup. We created a lookup file called event types, and we put it in the shared library. So if you come in with me and you grab this value right here, so I'm on step 13, in case you're wondering, talks about the pop-up window. And in the middle of this paragraph, it says /shared/event types. I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to copy that. In a minute, I'll explain why. I'm going to copy this so it's there. And really what they want us to do is they want us to go back in here to our environment. They want us to go into our event type parameter. They want us to click on these more action button or the detail button. They want us to change the parameter settings. And down here is where we can set the values for this parameter. And I can either make text entries, or I can use label value pairs, or I can reference a lookup. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to choose lookup to reference a lookup. And then we're going to tell it what lookup file to use. And here's where I'm going to paste that stuff in. Now, before I paste it, once I clicked in there, these are all the lookups that people have already created. So if I start typing in shared, and you'll find this true to our product. You start typing something in and it will automatically try to filter it for you. So there it is. It's found it, shared event types. Now I could have pasted it. That would have worked as well. So I'm telling it where the lookup file is. Now this lookup file has already been created. It's a simple query that says, show me all my event types for 24 hours. That's it. And then when I click on this field that says, I'm going to go into that lookup and I want to see what fields there are. And right now there's only one field called event type. So I'm going to click event type. I could have other fields in there, but I want to select the field that I want to show here. And then I'm going to click save. And now what we've done is we've said, when you display this parameter and I get rid of this star, it's now going to give us a pick list of our event types. It's now going to go and find that. And so now I can select this and I can filter for just AWS API calls, or I can backspace over it, select this, run my query again, see my console logins, or I can say I want to see both. Okay. So we've created some additional functionality. Now, obviously, we would want to do the same thing with Actor, but we're going to show you later in the class where we can do that, and we'll actually build the lookup file for it. So stay tuned. That's coming up in a future lab. That's how we create these lookups so that the user can then see a pick list of what their choices are. If I add another event type into my system, I would then automatically see it. All right. Looks like we're in good shape. By the way, congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. You have just finished up lab number 1. Oh, was one more thing. I'm sorry. I got to add this to a dashboard. Sorry. Got to add this to a dashboard. We're going to start building out our dashboard. Now, again, if you're having problems following along with me, you will find that at the end of most of these labs, we have the code written for you, the entire code. And so if I go back here a little ways, here's the code. You can copy this code, paste it in there, it'll run, and then you got to do the rest of these directions. Change these properties, do this, change that parameter, and you'll be caught up with me. Now, the last thing we want to do is build the dashboard. And when we build this dashboard, we want to, there's a little button down here in our aggregates tab called Add to Dashboard. And our panel title, I believe they want us to call this panel title Top 10 User Activity. Great. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to paste that in. Okay.
John, while you're doing this, there's a question in there. Are they supposed to be doing the lab as you're doing it step by step, or is the overview and then they're going to have lab time?
No, the goal is for you to follow along with me as we're going through this.
All right, so
Apologize for that confusion. Yep. If again, if you didn't get this one lab done, it's okay. We will, on the next lab, make sure you create your dashboard and try to keep up. So, and don't get me wrong, if you want to just watch and learn, that's fine. You can do this later. You can come back and do this exercise on your own if you want, that's fine. So, but we prefer if you follow along. So I'm adding this panel to a dashboard. I give the panel a name. And then under the dashboard, I get to pick what I want to call this dashboard. And they would like us to name our dashboard SOC, SOC underscore with your initials, and then a 3-digit random number. Maybe choose the random number that you picked earlier, okay? So in my case, I will type in here SOC underscore my initials, JWM underscore, and actually you don't care if an underscore there or not, and then 3-digit number, I'll grab 603 or 502 or whatever. Actually, truth be told, I think what I want to do is I'm going to put an underscore in here and I'm going to put today's date because I'm probably going to do this again tomorrow. So 06/08/2021. Okay. But you want to create this dashboard object. Okay. And it says dashboard is not selected. Hang on a second. Oh, I know why. I think I created an earlier one. There we go. Create new dashboard. That's what I want right there. Okay, let me just tack on a couple of zeros here. What is the problem here? Hang on a second. Just type in a random number here. Dashboard is not selected. Should not have a problem with this. As long as I can create a unique name, it should not have a problem.
Hey, John,
Yes, sir.
I had the same problem. You have to toggle the create in dashboard UI, that little thing.
Actually, you don't have to. You can just click your personal folder
Ah, okay,
and it
sorry.
goes away. So yeah, that error happened once because I have 2 dashboards with the identical name. I did another dashboard today with today's date. So that's why, but I didn't. You got to click on this personal so it clears the error out. And then actually, let me just change this back here a little bit. Bear with me. 06/08/2021/00. Okay. Make sure I have a unique dashboard there. And then I can click add. And then lo and behold, it will add a new dashboard with this panel. Now, I can make this panel larger. I can make this panel smaller. There's a bunch of other things we can do to this panel. Now, when we're dealing with these legacy dashboards, these ones that we created, so somebody pointed out that when you click add to dashboard, I'll put something in here just to get past this, this panel here. Okay. This little switch right here, we have 2 dashboards. We have our legacy dashboards, which is what I created, or we have these new dashboards, and this is our new user interface for dashboards. Because we created this exercise in the legacy dashboards, I would prefer that we use the legacy interface. But if you did click this switch, it's not a big deal. The reason I'm mentioning all this is if you're dealing with legacy dashboards like I am, you create your query, you add it to your dashboard. You create your query, you add it to your dashboard. You create your query, you add it to your dashboard. If you're using the new dashboards, in those dashboards, you can create new queries and add to that existing dashboard from that existing dashboard. So that's one of the reasons why our new dashboards are more powerful. But just to keep it simple as far as what we're teaching, I did want to try to use the legacy dashboard, but it doesn't make any difference which one you want to use. Okay.
I think the issue earlier was you have to anchor the dashboard within a folder. And if you don't select the folder, you can't create the dashboard. So you can't just have a floating dashboard not assigned to a subfolder to store it under. So that was the reason why.
Okay, thank you, Scott. All right, I think we've been at it a little bit more than an hour. So what do you say we take a quick 10-minute break? So let me set up my little 10-minute timer here. And when this timer gets down to 0, I would like you all back and ready to go. And we will carry on with the rest of the labs. Don't worry, that first lab is always tough. After that, we move much quicker and things flow much easier. Okay. See you back in 9 minutes and 47 seconds.
So there was a question about sharing your dashboard. I don't know if you want to pick it up when we come back, because that's going to be a common question, I think, for
Yep,
everybody.
we'll talk about that when we come back.
We'll hit that when we come back.
Yep, thanks.
So the quick answer is yes, but we'll show you how.
Yep. All right, folks, we are back. Hang on a second. I think my timer went off and my timer decided to reset. There we go. All right, so one of the questions that was asked right before we went on break was how to share my dashboard, okay? So if I go into my navigation pane, and if I go into my personal directory, I will see my dashboard. So if I scroll down here, here it is, SOC JWM 0608, da 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 da. And if I want to share this with somebody, I can click on the 3 dots, the details or the more action button, and you'll see there's an option here to share. And if I click on share, I can pick who I want to share this with. I can share it with my entire organization, and or I can share it by role. So these are roles that we have, or I can share it by named user. So I can actually share it to a specific named user if I want to. And then when you share it, you can decide what privileges they want. Do I want them to be able to view this, see this, run this, but not make any changes to it? Or do I want them to be able to view it, see it, run it, and make changes to it, but they can't change who has permissions to it? Or do I want them to be able to see it, change it, modify it, and also change permissions? So just to give you an example here, I'm going to take this, and you don't have to do anything, just watch. I'm going to share this with my entire organization. I am also going to give it to the training analyst, which is a role all your accounts have. And then I'm also going to add my boss in here, Josh Brothheim. So I'm going to add these 3 distinct different types of users. By default, I'm going to set it all to view. I can, if I want to, notify them via email, but I'm not into Mailstorm, so I'm going to leave that off. But I'm going to click share. And when I click share, it's now shared. Now I want to go back in and I want to click on share again. And if I can see who has access, and I see they all have view. Well, I want the entire organization to be able to view this. I want you all to not only be able to view it, but I'd like you all to be able to edit it, make changes to it. And I want Josh not only be able to view it and edit it, but I want him to be able to set permissions on it. And so I can change those settings and save those settings. And that's how we share our dashboard. Any questions? All right. So any other questions before we get started? Okay. I still remember the question about the parameters. I'm looking that up in the process, looking that up during the break. And I'm going to get you an answer to it. But if we go into our log searches and we search, there should be a section on parameters and how to manage those little rascals. So, and then passing multiple arguments in. I know I've seen it before. I just can't find it real quickly now. All right. So I owe you that. Let's go on lab 2 and let's start knocking these labs out. Now you're going to find that in most cases, a lot of these labs are very similar. We're dealing with AWS CloudTrail data. And so we're going to almost always parse out the same fields and always look at the same fields. So just to save ourselves a little bit of time, I am going to go down here to step 2, and I'm going to go ahead and grab all this lovely code right there. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to go ahead and go back into my Sumo Logic environment. I'm going to create a new log search, and I am going to paste this code in. And I'm a big believer of code a little bit, type a little bit, test a little bit, right? So we type it in, we got it entered. Let's make sure it runs. Let's hit the old start button here and make sure it runs. We get results. Life is good. Okay. Okay. Jeffrey asked the question. Are we answering the question at the end of the lab? I don't plan on it, Jeffrey, but we can if there's a burning desire. I'm just trying to save some time here. Okay. Get ourselves caught up. Okay. So I'm starting to see the results here. They want me to go ahead and filter and create parameters. This is a where clause. The exclamation mark reads not. So where not is empty actor. I want to make sure any fields in my results that have a blank or null with empty actor or an empty event type, I want to filter those out. So basically this is a where clause that's going to filter those things out. And I'm going to add that to the end of this query that I've copied and pasted. So again, looking at my CloudTrail data, I've grabbed these 4 fields. I'm checking to make sure actor and event type is not empty. If it's not empty, then I want to create some parameters. So the next thing here on step 5 is I am going to say where event type matches my event type and actor matches my actor. These are parameters. And when I paste that information in there, presume my parameters get created automatically. And I want to make sure that this default value is a star and this default value is a star. And again, I want to run this to make sure it works. I'm getting my results back. Life is good. Now you may recall that here in my query, I can go to, if I wanted to, my manage parameter settings. And I remember I had the lookup table here. And I could go back in and reference that lookup file that I created, right? /shared /event, EVENT. There it is, event types. I could save the, I'm sorry, excuse me, scroll down one field. And I want to grab that field, event type, and save this, and we are up and running. So now I have my pick list back. I have my pick list back. So if I get rid of that, I see there's my pick list, and life is good. So basically that's what we're doing. Now, the last thing it wants me to do, so here was where I left off, my where clauses here, right? My parameters. The last thing it wants us to do here is it wants us to add a lookup. And this is a geographical lookup. And if I go into help.sumologic.com, which is our documentation, and if I search for geo lookup or geolocation, I'll do a geo lookup. I see that I have this geo lookup map, and here, in order to render a map, I need to have latitude and longitude, and it proceeds to tell me how this works. We, with our lookup command, will send some information to a company called Newstar, one of our partners. And Newstar will take that IP address and it will give us the latitude and longitude of where that IP address is. That's basically how this works. So in our lookup statement, we say, lookup, what do we want from geo/location on IP equals, we specify what our IP address is called. Or in other words, grab this line, add a new line at the bottom by doing a shift enter, paste that in. Now, typically when you read a lookup line, lookup command, it's always good to start at the end. So we're going to pass in source IP. Where did source IP come from? It came from right there. We're going to pass that in. We're going to call it IP. We're going to go to Newstar. We're going to pass in that IP address. We're going to ask it to give us latitude, longitude, country name, city, and region. So now when I run this, you'll see down here, here's my actor, here's my city, my country name, my latitude, my longitude, all of that good stuff. Now, again, it's displaying this information here alphabetically. We can change that if we need to. Normally, when we do a latitude and a longitude, we typically want to do a count so that we can generate a map. So we're going to add another line where we want to count by our actor, our source IP, our latitude, our longitude, our country name, and our event type. So again, new line, paste that line in. When I run it, I now have this aggregates tab, and I told it to count by actor, source IP, latitude, longitude, country name, event type, and column or count. So now I can see where my users are logging in from. And because I have latitude and longitude and count in here, this little icon right there is enabled. And if I click on this little icon, this now becomes a map. Now, again, you might see that there's double continents here. All right, that's because of the X and Y axes of this. Let me make sure we're all caught up here. So it wants me to create this map and insert it into a dashboard. So I've created the map. I want to add it to my dashboard. The panel name is going to be called Cloud Trail Geo of Sign-in Activity. Copy that. I'm going to go back here to my map. I'm going to say I want to add it to my dashboard. Panel title is that thing I copied. And then down here, I want to find my dashboard. So I'm going to type in SOC. And I'm going to find, here's my dashboard that I just created. I want this added to my existing dashboard. If you don't have a dashboard, you can type in any name that you want to down here. I do suggest you call it SOC underscore with your initials to make it easy for you to find. And you can create a new dashboard, but I want this to go to my existing dashboard. Let me click add. Now it says, hey, a filter already exists. So you may recall in my dashboard in my previous query, I had a parameter for event type and I had a parameter for actor. This query also has a parameter for event type. It also has a parameter for actor. If I tell it to add panel, it's going to treat those as a singular object. So the event type from this panel, the event type from that, they're the same event type. And that's what I want them to treat it as. The actor from this panel is the same as the actor from that panel. That's what I want it to be treated as. Or the other option is I can go back and rename my fields, my parameters so that they're different. But since I want them to be the same, I can click add panel. So now I've added two panels. Here's my world, where they're logging in from. Here's my top 10 activity. Now, one thing I didn't mention to you, but I'll do it now. Each of these panels has a filter funnel where I can see my filters. But more importantly, my entire panel has a filter funnel here at the top. And I can click on that and I can swipe over my event type. And because of that lookup work I did before, I can pick one of these values and you'll notice that it automatically changes both of my panels. In fact, in here, I can click on this gear and I can decide which panels I want it to affect or which panels I don't want it to affect. Now, in the case of actor, I don't have a pick list yet. I will later, but I could type in something like Gosha. And now I can filter both panels for, here's Gosha's top 10 user activity, and there's where Gosha's logging in from. So I'm filtering both of these panels. So that's where these parameters become very handy. We can allow our users to search and select different users, different event types, different things. And therefore it makes this dashboard probably more usable. Now, again, if you want to close this up, there's a little X box over here to close it up. If you want to open it back up, you click on the filter funnel and change those values. Okay. Okay. Are we answering the questions at the end of the labs? No? Okay, fair enough. Got that. All right, fair enough. Sorry. Just catching up on the chat. That, by the way, folks, is lab number 2. Okay. By the way, I think I will hit these questions just because they are probably good questions. So let me go back here. Here in lab 2, it says lookup uses CrowdStrike data to provide latitude and longitude. No, it does not. That's false. It uses New Star data to provide latitude and longitude. CrowdStrike, you'll see later, provides us malicious confidence and whether an IP is a bad actor and things like that. Questions on number 1 here is false. Number 2, I can display a map without aggregating their data. That too is false. If I go here and I do not aggregate, I do not count, okay? I do not have a count tab. There is no count tab. There is no map or bars or anything like that. In the messages tab, there is none of that. Here, there is my different icons on my aggregates tab because of my count. This allows me to create the type of visualization that I want. And then the third question here, I can use add panel to add to an existing dashboard. This question will eventually have to yank out because in the new dashboards, that's correct. In the legacy dashboard, it is incorrect. In the legacy dashboards, like I have here, there is an option here to add panel, but the only thing it will add is a title panel or a text and title panel. So it really does not add a panel. In these legacy dashboards, you have to create your log queries, then you add them to the dashboard. That's how it works in the legacy dashboards. And for the purpose of the test, that's how you want to think about it. Now, if I go back to lab 1 and I hit the questions real quick at the bottom. Okay. JSON field equals raw, source IP is source IP. This is going to extract our source IP and the values of that source IP in our incoming log messages. That's true. Okay. So it's going to grab the source IP and all the values that are source IPs. Double curly brackets enclose a variable label are used to create parameters. Hopefully, you know that answer is true. That's how you can type in and create your parameter on the fly. And number 3, I use the settings icon on the messages tab to change the color of my bar graph. Trick question. Back to my query. Your query. On your messages, here is the settings tab where you can export this information out, but you don't change any colors. You do it on the settings tab, settings button on the aggregates tab, not the messages tab. And that's where you can change your colors, depending on what kind of visualization you have. So that one's false. Okay. And that brings us to lab number 3. Any questions so far? Okay. Don't worry, folks, we'll get through these labs fairly quickly. Okay, we really will. Things are moving now. Okay. So in lab number 3, I'm going to take these first couple of the source query, the JSON, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it right in here to a new log search. Boom. Then I'm going to go back in here and you can run it if you want, but I'm going to go ahead and here's where we create our parameters. Copy. Paste. Also my parameters. Then I'm going to grab the rest of this code. Copy. Paste. Now, good news. Most of this code you have seen before, right? I'm grabbing our CloudTrail data. Here's where we're extracting our fields. Here's our parameters. We're testing to make sure things are not empty. And most importantly, the purpose of this query in this exercise is we want to look for the top 10 number of failed login attempts, which means that the value, the result is going to be failed or unsuccessful, right? So here we're looking for a result type. And again, my result type is in my response of my Elements console login of failure. And I'm only doing this for AWS console signings. I am not doing this for API calls. In fact, technically, I don't need this parameter right here. This parameter could go away. But I'm not really going to give the user a choice. They're only going to have one event type, AWS console sign-ins. I want to see who signs in and who fails. That's the purpose of this query, okay? Because they're fine signed in, they're failing. That could be an interesting indicator. That could be somebody's trying to hack into somebody's account maybe, or something along those lines. And then these last 3 lines of code, when I paste them in, time slice 1H is going to create buckets for 1 hour. Now I'm going to change this. I'm having trouble. I'm going to change this to 24 hours. So I'm going to create 24 1-hour buckets, and I'm going to group my data in those buckets. That's what time slice does. Then I want to count by my time slice, my actor, my event type, my event name, and my result. In fact, I'm going to comment out this line and run this. Oops, excuse me. Got to go in here and put my default values in. Okay. So because of my count by, I have this aggregates tab. Now notice that these buckets here are not in any order. They're not, okay? You could sort them if you want to. You can do a sort by or an order by time slice so that they are in order, but some functions will automatically force them to be put in order. One of those functions that automatically puts them in order is my top. My top 10 or top 5 or top 3 or whatever, top X. I want to see my top 10 actors by my time slice, my event type, my result, and my count. And when I run this, you will now notice that my time slices are in fact in order. And so I'm saying, here's my actor, here's my time slices, here's my event console type, which is kind of redundant. Well, I only do one of those. And then the fact that they all failed. So now I have a listing here of what users are failing to log in. Now, a user failing to log in once is not a big deal. They made a typo, that sort of. Start seeing a bunch of those, then maybe somebody's trying to log in with their account. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. By the way, here is the entire query of how it looks. And so now I want to add this panel to our dashboard. So I'm going to take, and again, here's my aggregates. Here's my add to dashboard. I'm going to add this to my existing dashboard. I think they want me to call this top 10 failed login attempts. And I want to go find my dashboard to put it in. SOC, JWM. Oops, there it is. Okay, add it. Again, I'm going to get the same message. It says, look, you already have searches in that dashboard that have event type as a parameter and actor as a parameter. Are you sure you want to use these? And do you want them to mean the same thing? Yes, I do. Click Add Panel. Now, just to show you, let me go back to my dashboard for a second. Let me go to my filter funnel. And here in my filter funnel, as I said, I can pick a specific user. Let's grab Kevin this time. Grab Kevin in lowercase. By the way, if you want to worry about these things not being case insensitive, you can obviously do a 2 upper or 2 lower on them. That's one of the functions we have. But you'll notice that this data, here is Kevin, here is Kevin, and here is Kevin. It filtered all 3 of these. So I'm just looking at Kevin's data. All right. So there we go. We're all set. Here's the quiz. Adding a wildcard to a parameter window means it will filter out everything. What do you think, guys? True or false? Prevailing theory is false. Absolutely correct. Yes, indeed. Thank you. It doesn't filter out anything. Time slice groups my incoming logs into chunks of time. That is true. We can make it, time slice 1M for 1 minute. We can make it time sliced 5M for 5 minutes, but we're basically breaking up into chunks of time. And then the following code, pipe, where not is empty, actor, filters out logs that do not have a actor. Now, I might say filters out logs that do not have an actor value, or where the actor value is empty, but you get the idea. This statement is true. Okay. Questions? All right. Moving on to lab number 4. Attack, compromise, detection of a brute force attack. What is a brute force attack? Brute force attack is I, as a user, trying to maliciously, trying to access your environment. I need to know 2 things. I need to know the username, and I need to know the email. Most of us, for your username is your email address. Excuse me. I need to know your username. I need to know your password. There we go. Try that again. Username and password. Well, most companies, your username is your email address. So I got that. So now I do is guess password. Okay. And so I could sit down and log in as you and type in a password, and you and type in a password, and you and type in a password. And obviously I would get a bunch of failures that I'm unable to log in. That would be indicative of a brute force attack. So I would like to create a report. I would like us to create a report that shows me when I have potentially a brute force attack occurring. So that's what this lab is going to do for us. So again, I'm going to grab this code, copy it, paste it into a new log search. Also go back 24 hours to be right. Okay, tell us to use 24-hour period here. Then it wants us to create our parameter. Well, we've done this before, haven't we? Paste this stuff in. By the way, let's put a star here. Let's put a star here. So it all runs and works fine for us. Now we want to aggregate our data over time. Now, time slice you've seen before. But these other statements, these if statements, you have not. So let's talk about them. Paste this code in. So the first if statement here is going to create a field called successes count. I'm going to create a brand new field called successes count. And if my result is success, in other words, you're able to successfully log in, I'm going to put a 1 in there. Otherwise, I'm going to put a 0 in there. So when you have an if statement, you have, here is my condition. Here is my true value. Here is my false value. Now I'm also going to go through here and I'm going to say, I'm going to create a field called failure count. And I'm going to say if the result is equal to failure, I'm going to put a 1 in there. Otherwise, I'm going to put a 0 in there. Then I want to count up or sum the number of my successes. I want to sum up the number of my failures based on my time slice, my actor, and my event type. So because I'm using a sum operator, that's going to create my aggregates tab. And here in my aggregates tab, I am seeing time slice, actor, event type, successes, and failures. I could even take this a little bit farther, and I don't really care if the failures were equal to 0. If failure equals 0, it means you just logged in successfully. That's not what this dashboard's about. That's not what this panel's about. I want to see where somebody's trying to log in as you. So if the failure count is less or equal to 0, I don't care. I only want to see where failure is greater than 0. And I'm going to take the failure, number of failures, divided by the number of successes, times 100 to get a percentage. So I'm going to add that in there as well. So again, I'm going to add this code, these couple of lines. And now when I look at my aggregates, I see my successes, I see my failure, and I see my failure percentage. Now, in the case of a brute force attack, would my failure percentage be high or low? What do you guys think? Put it in the chat box. Let me know. What do you think? If I'm getting a brute force attack, I would expect, there you go, everybody's saying high. Absolutely correct. So I could sort this if I wanted to, based on failure percentage, right? I could do a lot of things, but this gives me the information that I'm basically looking for, All right. Super high, somebody says. And they're absolutely right. But even if it's somewhat low, you may want to talk to your users, may want to do some training on them, do what you think is necessary to try to help folks, because obviously we all have a duty, a responsibility to ensure that we are in fact secure and we're keeping our network secure, right? So again, we're going to add this particular panel as it is to our dashboard. So again, here's our results. Click add to dashboard. We're going to call this panel possible brute force attempts, and we want to add it to our lovely SOC dashboard. There it is. So we're starting to build out this dashboard. Again, same message, still click add panel. And so this dashboard is really starting now to take shape. And again, I can make things bigger, smaller. I can move things around if I want to, maybe move this down here, whatever. By the way, I can also change the theme. There's a toggle theme, so I can make it look dark or I can make it look white, whichever you prefer. So you can start, like I said, spacing this stuff out, scaling it out, all that fun stuff. A lot of that we tend to talk about in the fundamentals course. Okay. Just for simplicity's sake, however, I'm going to take this, stretch this out here, make it look the way I want it to look. Okay. All right. Quiz. The underscore raw refers to the raw data and the incoming logs in this example. That statement's true. When they put in here JSON field equals raw, it's the raw data. It's exactly what it means. I never told you that, but I'll tell that to you now. Okay. Question number 2. If result matches failure count, okay, then return a 1 to failure in this example. So really, what is this example doing? This example is saying if result is equal to failure, I'm going to return a 1 as failure count. That's what I'm going to do, right? And that's really what's happening. So this statement is true. Statement 2 is true. And statement number 3, when you use time slice 1H, you are grouping incoming logs into 1-hour groups for the purposes of analyzing data over time. You are grouping your incoming data into 1-hour groups. I'm not sure I'd say you're grouping your incoming log, but if I said log data, I'd probably like that better. Good news. On the exam, if you get hung up on a question like that, ask me. We are not trying to trick you. This question as it reads should be true, but I don't like the phrase logs. Incoming log data I like, but not incoming logs into 1-hour groups. So, but the goal of time slice is to group our data over time so we can analyze it. That is the job. All right, I realize I got about 5 minutes left. And so let's go to town here and let's get this stuff knocked out. We're almost there, by the way, almost. So lab 5, we're going to detect a land speed violation. Now, I'm going to warn you, this query is a son of a gun. It's a huge query. Additionally, in the test, for those of you taking the test, it's going to give you put in the right order, and it's going to give you every, or at least a bunch of these. And so my point is, take advantage of the open book test, right? Don't try to rationalize and figure out what's going on. Look this up. Go to this lab, find this, put it in the right order, or the other thing you can do is say, I don't care if I missed that question, I'll get the other ones right and still pass. But this one's just a pain in the neck question. I don't like it. Now, just to give you an idea, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and I'm going to walk you through this. This is what the final query should look like. Okay. This one's a monster. And this gives you an idea of what's happening, of how big queries can be. But let me go through it so you get a sense for what is happening. So up here, I'm grabbing my CloudTrail data, right? I am extracting out my username and my source IP. Now, no drop means I don't want to remove anything. I don't want to filter out anything. If there's no values for user or IP, don't filter that stuff out. So basically, I'm extracting out username, source IP. The username is going to be called user. Source IP is going to be called IP. Now, I want to see I'm going to put a parameter in here that says where username matches actor. And I need to put a star in there. So I want to, again, be able to put a parameter here and pick my user. Then we've got a function called isPublicIP. We want to make sure the IP addresses we're looking at are all public IP addresses, right? We don't want a 169.256 or whatever. We don't want that. We only want public IP addresses. Then this min is going to go back to my message time and find the first time a user logs in. And I'm going to sort it by my user and my login time. So that's basically what we're doing. Now, we have an IPv4 to number. And what that does is this is going to convert my IP address to a field, which we're going to call IP decimal. These backshift operators let me go back through my logs and let me find the times when the user logged in. I'm going to call that previous login, and the IP address they logged in from, and I'm going to call that user. So what I'm doing with the backshift operators, I'm taking a point that, the very first time the user logged in, that's my min function back here. Then I'm looking at every single time a user logged in my logs. By the way, let's make this 24 hours. And I want to see all the times they logged in, where the IP address was, and what time it was. Okay. Until I get to a point where I go back, there's no data. Okay. Now, this is just something that's going to convert our decimal back into an IP address, right? We got to convert it back to octets, right? Which basically says we take the number and we're going to convert it to an integer. And we're going to take it to the power of 256, position 3 here, and that's going to be octet 1. And 256 position 3 here divided by 256 position 2 here. That's going to be my second octet. So this little function right here is just designed to convert our decimal back to an IP address, is what it's going to do. Now, the point is, I'm going to have two IP addresses, where you are now and where you were before. And what I want to do is I want to look these two things up, and I want to look at the latitude and the longitude of these and the country name. So I want to see where you are now and where you were before. So your current IP is IP. I'm going to look up on that. I'm going to look at your previous IP. And I'm also going to filter out any place where we've got nulls. We've got nulls for latitudes, longitudes, either the first one or the second one, either the previous IP or the regular IP. Now, Haversine, the Haversine formula, the Haversine mechanism here. Let me go back to the lab. The Haversine is used as a function that computes the distance between two latitudes and two longitudes into kilometers. So by using the Haversine function between two latitudes and two longitudes, lat 1, lat 2, long 1, long 2, I can figure the distance between these 2 points. And that distance will be in kilometers. So thank you very much. It's part of the metric system. It's not part of our lovely English standard system. It's not a mile. Now that I've got my values, I want to take my login time minus my previous login time and divide it by this number so I can convert it into hours. I want to see the distance between the time you logged in and the previous time you logged in. And that's going to be converted here to hours. And I want to see the distance in kilometers from this Haversine result divided by my login time in hours, my change of login time. And I'm going to compute something called apparent velocity. And obviously, if you logged in from one location and you logged in from that same location, I don't care about that. You haven't moved anywhere. So if I only want to see where my apparent velocity is greater than 0 or where there's been movement, right? I want to see where you've logged in, where there's some distance here. And then I'm going to set a value as a suspicious speed. 500 kilometers per hour, we'll consider that suspicious, right? Got to be flying, you got to be Superman to catching that distance. And then I can test and see where my apparent kilometer is greater than my suspicious speed. Now, just for fun, I'm going to comment all these out. By the way, if you want to comment out a bunch of lines, all you're going to do is, if you're on a Windows keyboard, hold your Alt key down. If you're on a Mac keyboard, hold your Option key down and drag a line down. So hold that key down and drag a line down. And then whatever you type can be used across a bunch of different lines. And so now when I run this, before I do those last couple things, I want to see what we're getting here. So down here, down here, I have my user, my IP address. This is that decimal login time. This is, I'm sorry, excuse me, this is their login time. This is their IP decimal. This is their previous IP address. This is their previous login time. It's converted it all to octets. It's figured out what country this stuff's from. It's figuring out my distance here, looking at my login time, the distance of my login time, and we're figuring out what the apparent velocity is, okay? By the way, if I divide by 0, as you might imagine, that's going to create an infinity situation. So what I want to do is I want to just do a little formatting here. I'm going to take the IP address and the previous IP address. I'm going to concatenate them together with a comma. Also, I'm going to look at the country name. If the country names, the country you were in when you first logged in and the country you logged in from it consecutively, they're the same country name. I just want to display that country name once. If they are two separate names, then I want to display them both separated by a comma. I also don't need a bunch of these fields. So here I'm specifying what fields I want to see. I only want to see my user, my IP addresses, which is what I created up here, my countries, which is what I created here, my distance in kilometers, my login delta time, and then my apparent velocity. So when I run this, now in my aggregates, I am seeing, here's my user, here are the IP addresses they logged in from. Here are the countries they logged in from. In some cases, they're only in one country. Here's their distance in kilometers and their velocity. Now, obviously, I want to filter out where my user is equal to null. And I also want to get rid of where my apparent velocity is equal to infinity. Or in other words, my login delta time is 0, right? So I'm going to filter that out. And then finally, I can either sort by or order by, either operator works. I want to sort this by my apparent velocity. So I want to see who's gone the farthest, the quickest first. And, you know, again, these are the folks I might be a little suspicious of. You know, they were in Hong Kong, they were in Argentina. And again, they, you know, covered this amount of distance in a relatively short distance, you know, in 2 hours, almost 3 hours. They covered that kind of distance. Now, is it possible they logged in and then VPN into something, which take them out and gave them another IP address? Possible, possible. But the point is this is what we call a land speed violation. Somebody logged in from different IP addresses within a certain period of time where that's just not probable. So questions about that? And again, since I have latitudes and longitudes here, if I wanted to, I could, if I have latitude and longitude, I could display as a map, but I'm not showing any latitude and longitude. Let's take this out and let's call this land speed violations. Possible land speed violations, I should say. I think we get rid of an E there. And again, I want to add it to my dashboard, right? So again, SOC underscore JWM. Boom. Now, just to save some time here and give you more time for the exam, just bear with me. Okay. Let me go through these last exercises here fairly quickly and verbally. By the way, the questions here. Geo lookup receives an IP address and returns a location. Geo lookup does receive an IP address and returns a location. It returns a latitude, a longitude, can also return a country name, region name, stuff like that. So yeah, somebody said yes, that's true. Good, thank you. Haversine formula is used to convert octets to decimals. No, it's used to convert. It's used to compute the distance between two latitudes, two longitudes. Okay. Land speed violations allow us to detect suspicious user activity, right? Somebody went too far in such a short period of time. since we don't have transporters in today's technology, we have to consider that somebody's, moved quick or somebody else, I may have logged in as myself. Somebody may have tried to log in with me in Chile or something, So if that's happening in a short period of time, that's suspicious activity. Now, lab 6, just so you know, is on our parameters. So remember we had our parameter for event types. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to create a lookup table for our actor. And what this query does is it simply goes out to our CloudTrail data, extracts out our actor. We're going to count by actor. Then we're going to move the count. And then we're going to save this. We're going to save this in our shared directory. And you're going to change these values to give it a name. Okay. And you can call it whatever the heck you want to. Maybe your initials JWM _ AWS _ actor _ list. That's what they want you to call it. And the point is, when you run this query, rather than showing you the results, this pop-up is going to appear saying, hey, you're trying to save something. And you're saving a lookup in our environment. It's saved in the shared directory. You can save it in the shared directory. You can save it in your personal directory. But if I want others to see it, I probably want to put it in the shared directory. Then we can take this. In fact, I'll just go ahead and quickly take it. Give me a second here. "24 hours. AWS. Now, what this is going to do is this is going to create our query and save it. Save it in the Sumo Logic environment. So here's my results. There's my actor. Again, we stripped off the count. So there's my list of actors. Now, I can take this actor list and I can go back to any of these other queries where I have actor, and I can modify the parameter settings, telling it to use a lookup table. And I can tell it what lookup table to use. I'll paste this information in. It found that. And then in here, I select the field that I want, which is actor. And now when I save this, now I can go to actor. I can backspace over this, and there is my pick list. And then I can pick what value I want, run my query. And if I re-add this back to my dashboard or update my dashboard, it'll automatically bring that reference to that query in there as well. That's what that's doing. Okay, in a nutshell. Now, quiz here to display a lookup table. I use the command CP. No, you don't. You don't. To display a lookup table, you just basically query off of it. Okay. Search parameters allow me to pivot quickly through any metadata values. That's true. Search parameters do. And I can use the save operator to create a lookup table. That's true. Okay. Okay. Good question. Mike asked, if you run this query later, will it overwrite the values or the lookup, or will it append? Good question. When you use the save, there's an option to append or there's an option to replace. So it depends on how you use the lookup. So let me be a little bit more precise here. And if I can, thank you. Go out to our documentation. And if I do a search for lookup, you'll find we got all kinds of documentation on our lookups and creating lookups and how to pass in more than one value and all that good stuff. So I would encourage you to check that out. Okay. So great question. Thank you. All right. Next exercise. We're almost done here. The next exercise says, we want you to take this dashboard that you've created, and we'd love for you to export it. And if you're running CloudTrail with AWS, you should be able to import it into your environment. So this lab goes through the exercise of exporting. How do I export it? It's real simple. I go into here. I go into my personal folder where I saved this. I find it. on the three dots here, I have the option to export this. Now, when you export one of our dashboards, it actually writes it as JSON. Your dashboard is really a JSON file. And so I'm going to tell it to download this. It's going to download this, and then I'm going to sit there and open it up. In this case, I'm on a Mac. So I'm going to open up in my Finder. And I'm going to open this up with some text editor, okay? I could use a whole bunch of different text editors, but I'll use Visual Studio here, fine, whatever. And here's the problem. You may recall when we created our queries, we used and said source category equals labs/AWS/ hang on a second. Okay. I think I grabbed the wrong one, so I guess. Done. I grabbed the Apache one. That was wrong. I was like, wait a second, it's not right. There we go. Let's try this again, this time with feeling. Let's export. Okay. That looks better. Let's download this. Let's open this up in our text editor. Let me find it in Finder here first. Then let me open it up in my text editor. There we go. So here in all of our queries that are in this dashboard, it says the source category, the data is coming from lab/AWS/CloudTrail. Now, maybe when you brought in your CloudTrail data, you called it the same thing, lab/AWS/CloudTrail. But more than likely, you may have called it prod/AWS/CloudTrail or cloud data/AWS/whatever. Bottom line is you're going to have to replace this in all of this file. So this is in multiple occurrences. Every query has this in it. So you got to go and do a find and replace it with that. Then you can save it. Then you can go to your company's Sumo Logic environment. And in your company's Sumo Logic environment, in here, off your personal folder, there is an import option. You can click import, give it a name, paste in the JSON here, and then you'll have the ability to save this and import it right in. So you can take it out of our system, edit it a little bit if you need to change the data source names, and then you can bring it into your environment. By the way, you will have to recreate those two lookup tables. Remember, we had the event type and we had the actor that we just created, or I just created. You'll have to recreate those. That's the directions are there to do that. So you do that and you're good to go. Now, export outputs JSON format. That statement is true. Before inputting, I must change the pointers to my data using a visual text editor. That statement is also true. You want to, whatever you called your data, your source category of your data for this data, you have to change that. And then after importing, I cannot share my dashboard with others. Somebody asked that question earlier. I showed you how to share a dashboard. So that statement is false. Now, the last lab in here is one that we did in the workshop where we can use CrowdStrike. So there's a lookup command in here that goes against CrowdStrike and tells me if I have a malicious threat or if I have an IP address that's causing me problems, okay? Bear with me a second. And again, you can look up all kinds of information. We have a partnership with CrowdStrike. And this is wonderful because I'm looking for the code. Here we go. Here in this lookup statement right here, you are basically taking an IP address. Now, it could be an IP address, could be an email domain, it could be whatever. And it will pass it to CrowdStrike, this URL right here. And we can then find out, what type of thing it is, who the actor is, get the raw message information, get the threat level. And we call the threat level here malicious confidence. We renamed that to malicious confidence. So this query is going to take an IP address or IP addresses, and it's going to check and see, are they recognized by CrowdStrike as a threat? And that's basically what this one's doing, okay? So that's what this little exercise is doing. And again, you can take this code and play with it yourself. Last quiz, and somebody asked, you can check all incoming public IP addresses for malicious intent using our embedded CrowdStrike. Is that statement true or false? It is true. When using the outlier command, you can set the threshold equal to 3. That sets the standard deviation. That is true, but I did not talk about outlier. And you can search outlier in here. I forgot to mention about outlier. Outlier gives us a chart that shows our data on a line, and then we have a cloud behind it. That cloud indicates our standard deviations, the boundaries, if you will, of where that data can be. And if we are outside of that data, either below or above it, we'll see a red triangle. So that's what the outlier function does. You'll find that to be pretty powerful. So one of the arguments is threshold equals, and that sets your standard deviation. There is also, besides that, there is also, bear with me a second, window equals how many data points previous to the point you're at right now do you want to go back. Threshold, as I said, is standard deviation. Consecutive, how many consecutive points out do I need before I flag it as an outlier? And then direction plus or minus. If I'm displaying this out on a line chart, if I only want to display values that are above my average, then I want to make sure the plus is showing. If I want to see things below, I want my minus showing. If I want to see both above and below, I want to see both my plus and minus. A good example of why I would want to use this is if I'm showing graphically outlier data for my quality defects, right? And I'm looking above or below my quality defect, my average quality defects, I probably don't want to plot or look at my below defects. I only want to care when I'm above my quality defect threshold. So that I'd have a plus sign for, not a plus and a minus. Well, I apologize for that being so quick, but data doesn't count against ingestion when you use pre-aggregated scheduled views. That is true. Data does not count against ingestion when you pre-aggregated scheduled views. You'll find that there's going to be a question here with regards to using scheduled views and the advantages of using scheduled views. And that is discussed in this exercise, running a scheduled view, the advantages of. But when you get to that question, you're welcome to ask me and I'll guide you through that question. So it's a 4-part question. It says, is this better or worse? 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 And one of them is not a better thing. The other 3 are. So 3 things are beneficial, 1 is not. And again, I'll gladly help you when we get there. Now, apologize, I've taken up 15 minutes of your exam time. But what questions have you?
There was a process question in the chat. I don't know the answer. So after we export the source category should match with the one we used here in the labs to get the relevant data.
Okay. Sidar, when we export that file, the source category we see should be the ones we have in our training lab. lab/AWS/CloudTrail. Yes. However, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to take that exported file and you're going to need to edit and change that value to what you're calling your CloudTrail data. So if you call it prod/CloudTrail, change it to prod/CloudTrail, whatever you call that source category. That's what we have to change. So Sidar, I hope that answers your question. Then you can import it into your system and it will work. Okay. Thank you, Sidar. Appreciate the question. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. Let me show you how you want to get into your environment because this is a little interesting. One, I want you to all log out of Sumo Logic's training environment. So go in here, close this up, do whatever you want to. I'm going to go ahead and open up the account where it says training analyst, and I'm going to go ahead and sign out. And so I'm out of here. And I want you to take the test. I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. And if you do not have a Sumo Logic environment, I've got some great news. You can sign up for one absolutely free. So if you do not have a Sumo Logic environment with your company to use, here is a URL that you can use. So just bear with me a second while I put it in the chat box. Now, the reason we're doing this the reason that we're doing this is because if you're a Sumo Logic employee, you probably want to go to the customer usage, Bob, to answer your question, or some Sumo environment that you have access to. See, the issue is, and this goes back to Bob's question, we don't want you to log in as training plus analyst and some crazy number. That person has already taken that exam and passed it lots of times. We want you to log into an environment where you're logged in with your name. So if you're a Sumo Logic employee, you can probably go to customer usage and log in there, because you will log in as Bob Anderson, I would assume. Scott will log in as Scott Bauer. Life is good. Okay. I want you all to log in with your name. Okay. So when you log in down here, it has in the lower right-hand corner your name. All right. So that's the reason why we're asking you to log out of the training environment. Training analyst has already passed it. Training analyst 222, 333, 649, they've all passed it. They've all taken it because students have done that accidentally. We try to avoid it. We try to encourage them to log into their own environments, and it doesn't seem to happen. But
Also, the reason we're doing this is you're going to get a certification badge, right? That can be posted on your LinkedIn or whatever, right? So we keep track of those who have been certified in the class. It's more than just take the test and, you know, get a little silver star just for yourself, correct?
Right, correct. And more importantly, we can post this on LinkedIn, and you can post this on LinkedIn and all that good stuff. So you get bragging rights, and you obviously help your professional development. So yes, Scott is absolutely correct on that. Okay. Now I'm going to close up all these tabs. I don't need them anymore. So I'm going to say close up all my tabs. I don't need them. But to get to certification, you're going to click on this house tab when you logged into your company's environment. You're going to click on certification. Now, there's a little button here that says get certified. And many of you, when you click get certified, it's going to do this, take you right there, which is not where we want to go, but it's doing it for a security reason. It's actually behaving correctly. The issue is that we don't have your permission and your blessing to move from one environment to another. So this is actually a works as designed. Okay, this is not a bug. This is a works as designed. So the way we get around this, the way you need to get around this, is in your company's environment. You're going to again go into our navigation panel. You're going to go into the main menu of help. And when you go into help, you're going to click community. And when you go to community, you should see a pop-up appear, a panel will pop up and appear. I don't see it because I fixed this a long time ago. But if you see this panel that pops up and appears, there'll be either a verify button, verify email address button, submit, whatever, allow, some button. And when you click on that button, it will immediately send you an email. And in that email, it'll be from Sumo Logic. It's basically asking your permission to be able to move from one environment to another. And there's a hyperlink in the body of that email. And if you're okay with us, and you should be, click the hyperlink in the email, and then this problem magically goes away. It'll never rear its ugly head again. Now, when you go and click on the Home tab, Certification, Get Certified, it will take you into our learning management system. By the way, in the learning management system, here's where you can keep track of our password as it changes. Here's where we take all of your certification exams. Now, we, I believe, are taking the security exam. So down here, over here, there's a security tile. Lower right-hand corner. Do not take the cloud SIM. That's a whole nother story. But here's the security. And if you click on the security, you'll see that we've got our cloud security monitoring and analytics exam in English and in Japanese. Now, for those of you who speak Japanese, you can take that exam, but I don't speak Japanese. So I am going to take the English exam. And when you click on this tile, you'll see you can register it for free. And when you click register, boom, you're registered. It's done. You'll get an email, but it's done. Then it says before you start, and I don't want you to click before you start, just follow me, bear with me. Watch my screen for a second. It says you've got 22 questions, you got 16 minutes to complete it, and the passing score is 70%. Most of our passing scores are 75. This is an exception. We also usually give you 30 questions, not 22. So we gave you less questions, made a lower passing rate, should make it easier for you. When you click next, you will now get to where you get to take the exam. So here's your hour timer. I start scrolling down, or I click start assessment. I start seeing questions. Great. And so I start answering these questions. My timer starts counting down. Search templates are used to run complex query by providing values by selected parameter, for example, right? Follow steps to create a parameter, right? So let's see, we're going to highlight the value we want to parameterize. We're going to click create a parameter. We are going to provide the parameter name, default value, description, and then finally we'll set the values for it. So that is the correct order. And I can go through the rest of these and have myself a good time. Just for fun, I'll grab this third one. A high number of failed login attempts over a period of time is a potential indicator of brute force attack. There we go. Now, the reason I answered those two was I want to scroll down here, and I'm gonna take the exam, and I realized I only answered 2 questions. So I'm sure I didn't pass, okay? But there's a reason why I did this. So I can see the questions I got right. I can see the questions I got wrong. Can't see what I got wrong. But here's the important thing. Here's the thing I want you to take away from this. If when you take this exam and you submit it and it gets scored and you passed, please, 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 please hit this submit button. Because when you click the submit button, it will then add it to your profile. Up here in the corner is your profile. And in your profile is where you can see when you passed a certification exam, and you can see your certificate, and you can hang it up on your I love me wall and all of that good stuff. And more importantly, the thing I really like, you can also add it to your LinkedIn profile. So you add your LinkedIn profile, it will bring up LinkedIn. Basically, you fill this information out. It's already pre-filled out for you. Hit save. It's all there, okay? It's automatically pre-populated. All you got to do is hit save, and it adds it to your LinkedIn profile. Okay, so that's my point, is that you want to make sure that when you take your exam, you hit that button so it writes the results of your score into your profile. If you didn't, it won't happen, which means you got to take the exam again. By the way, if you fail the exam, you can take it anytime you want, again and again and again. If you don't want to take it right now, you can take it later, because I realize I've cut you off on time here a little bit. Some of you maybe get me for the next workshop. But I will be here for the next 30, 45 minutes in case you do want to take the exam. And otherwise, on behalf of myself and Scott, we want to thank you for attending this. We covered a lot of material in very short order. If there's anything we can do for you, please let us know. Otherwise, I'm going to be quiet and let you all take your exams. Good luck. Hope to see you again in the class again real soon. Thanks a lot.